owned the house and many of the tenants all her life. Before the meeting she had had an unofficial talk with Aunt Fatima, the old janitress who had once lived with her husband and children in a corner of the filthy basement, but had now only her daughter with her and had been moved into 2 light rooms on the first floor. "Well, Fatima, how are things going?" the delegate asked. Fatima complained that she could not cope with such a big house and so many tenants all by herself, and that she got no help because, although each family was supposed to take turns cleaning the yard and the sidewalks, not one of them did it. "Don't worry, Fatima, we'll show them." "What kind of committee is this, anyway?" "They're hopeless. Criminal elements are given shelter. People of doubtful morals stay on without registration. We'll get rid of them and elect another. I'll make you house manageress, only don't make a fuss." The janitress begged to be let off, but the delegate refused to listen. Looking around the room and deciding that enough people were present, she called for quiet and opened the meeting with a short introductory speech. She condemned the committee for slackness, proposed that candidates should be put up for the election of a new one, and went on to other business. In conclusion she said, "So that's how it is, comrades. Frankly speaking, this is a big house. It's suitable for a hostel. Look at all the delegates who come to town to attend conferences, and we don't know where to put them. It's been decided to take over the building for a district Soviet hostel for visitors from the country and to call it the Tivazan Hostel, in honor of Comrade Tivazan, who lived here before he was deported, as everyone knows. No objections. Now, as to dates. There's no hurry, you've got a whole year. Working people will be rehoused. Others must find accommodations for themselves and are given a year's notice. We're all working people. Every one of us. We're all workers," people shouted from every side, and one voice sobbed out. "It's great Russian chauvinism. Ah, the nations are equal now. I know what you're hinting at. Not all at once, please. Whom am I to answer first? What have nations got to do with it, citizen Valdirkin? Look at Krapugina. You can't think there's a question of nationality involved in her case, and we are certainly evicting her. You are you? Just you try and evict me. We'll see about that. You crushed sofa. You crumpled bedsheet." Krapugina screamed, calling the delegate every meaningless name she could think of in the heat of the quarrel. "What a she-devil!" The janitress was indignant. "Haven't you any shame? Don't you meddle in this, Fatima. I can look after myself," said the delegate. "Stop it, Krapugina, I know all about you. Shut up, I tell you, or I'll hand you over at once to the authorities. Before they catch you brewing vodka and running an illegal bar." The uproar was at its height when the doctor came into the room. He asked the first man he ran into at the door to point out to him a member of the House Committee. The other held up his hands like a trumpet in front of his mouth, and shouted above the noise. "Ga li iul li na. Come here. You're wanted." The doctor could not believe his ears. A thin elderly woman with a slight stoop, the janitress, came up to him. He was struck by her likeness to her son. He did not, however, identify himself at once, but said, "One of your tenants has got typhus." He told her the name. There are various precautions that have to be taken to prevent its spreading. Moreover, the patient must go to the hospital. I'll make out an admission order, which the House Committee has to certify. How and where can we get that done? She thought he meant how is the patient to get to the hospital, and replied, "There's a cab coming from the Soviet. For Comrade Demina, that's the delegate." She's very kind, Comrade Demina. I'll tell her. She's sure to let your patient have the cab. Don't worry, Comrade Doctor, we'll get her there all right. That's wonderful. Actually, I only meant where could I write out the order. But if there's a cab as well, may I ask you, are you the mother of Lieutenant Galiolin? We were in the same unit at the front. Galiolina started violently and grew pale. She grasped the doctor's hand. Come outside, she said. We'll talk in the yard. As soon as they were outside the door, she said quickly, talk softly, for God's sake. Don't ruin me. Yusupka's gone wrong. Judge for yourself. What is he? He was an apprentice, a worker. He ought to understand simple people are much better off now. A blind man can see that, nobody can deny it. I don't know what you feel yourself, maybe it would be all right for you, but it's a sin for Yusupka, God won't forgive him. Yusupka's father was a private. He was killed. They say his face was shot off, and his arms and legs. Her voice broke. She waited till she was more calm, then she went on. Come. I'll get you the cab. I know who you are. He was here for a couple of days. He told me. He said you knew Lara Gisha. She was a good girl, I remember her, she used to come and see us. What she's like now, I don't know. Who can tell with you people? After all, it's natural for the masters to stick together. But for Yusupka it's a sin. Come, let's ask for the cab. I'm sure Comrade Demina will let you have it. You know who Comrade Demina is? She's Olia Demina, a seamstress she was, worked for Lara's mother, that's who she is, and she's from this house. Come along. 13. Night had fallen. All around them was darkness. Only the small round patch of light from Demina's pocket flashlight jumped from snowdrift to snowdrift 4 or 5 paces ahead, confusing more than lighting the way. The darkness was all around them. And they had left behind him the house where so many people had known Lara, where she had often come as a girl, and where, they said, Antipov, her husband, had grown up. Will you really find your way without a flashlight, Comrade Doctor? Demina was facetiously patronizing. If not, I'll lend you mine. It's a fact, you know, I had a real crush on her when we were little girls. They had a dressmaking establishment. I was an apprentice in the workshop. I've seen her this year. She stopped on her way through Moscow. I said, where are you off to, silly? Stay here. Come and live with us. We'll find you a job. But it wasn't any good, she wouldn't. Well, it's her business. She married Pasha with her head, not with her heart. She's been crazy ever since. Off she went. What do you think of her? Careful, it's slippery. I don't know how many times I've told them not to throw the slops out of the door. Might as well talk to a wall. What do I think of her? How do you mean, think? What should I think? I haven't any time to think. Here's where I live. One thing I didn't tell her: her brother, who was in the army, I think they've shot him. As for her mother, my mistress, she used to be. I'll save her, I'm seeing to it. Well, I've got to go in, goodbye. They parted. The light of Demina's little flashlight shot into the narrow stone entrance and ran on, lighting up the stained walls and the dirty stairs, while the doctor was left surrounded by the darkness. On his right lay Sadovaya Triumfalnaya Street, on his left Sadovaya Karetnaya Street. Running into the black snowy distance, they were no longer streets, but cuttings in the jungle of stone buildings, like cuttings through the impassable forests of Siberia or the Urals. At home it was light and warm. Why are you so late? Asked Antonina Alexandrovna. An extraordinary thing happened while you were out, she went on before he could reply. Really quite unaccountable. Yesterday father broke the alarm clock. I forgot to tell you he was terribly upset. It was our only clock. He tried to repair it. He tinkered and tinkered with it, but he got nowhere. The clockmaker around the corner wanted a ridiculous price, £3 of bread. I didn't know what to do and father was completely dejected. Well, about an hour ago, can you believe it, there was a sudden ringing, such a piercing, deafening noise. We were all frightened out of our wits. It was the alarm clock. Can you imagine such a thing? It had started up again, all by itself. My hour for typhus has struck, said Yurii Androvich, laughing. He told her about his patient and the chiming clock. 14. But he did not get typhus until much later. In the meantime the Zhivagos were tried to the limits of endurance. They had nothing and they were starving. The doctor went to see the party member he had once saved, the one who had been the victim of a robbery. This man did everything he could for the doctor, but the civil war was just beginning and he was hardly ever in Moscow. Moreover, he regarded the privations people had to suffer in those days as only natural, and he himself went hungry, though he concealed it. Yurii Androvich tried to get in touch with the supplier in Brest Street. But in the intervening months the young man had disappeared and nothing was known about his wife, who had recovered. Galialina was out when Yurii Androvich called. Most of the tenants were new, and Demina was at the front. One day he received an allocation of wood at the official price. He had to bring it from the Vendava station. Walking home along the endless stretches of Meshchanskaya Street, keeping an eye on the cart loaded with his unexpected treasure, he noticed that the street looked quite different. He found that he was swaying from side to side, his legs refusing to carry him. He realized that he was in for a bad time, that he had typhus. The driver picked him up when he fell down and slung him on top of the wood. The doctor never knew how he got home. 15. He was delirious off and on for 2 weeks. He dreamed that Tonia had put 2 streets on his desk, Sadovaya Karetnaya on his left and Sadovaya Triumphalnaya on his right, and had lit the table lamp. Its warm orange glow lit up the streets and now he could write. So he was writing. He was writing what he should have written long ago and had always wished to write but never could. Now it came to him quite easily. He wrote eagerly and said exactly what he wanted to say. Only now and then a boy got in his way, a boy with narrow Kyrgyz eyes, in an unbuttoned reindeer coat worn fur side out, as in the Urals or Siberia. He knew for certain that this boy was the spirit of his death, or, to put it quite plainly, that he was his death. Yet how could he be his death if he was helping him to write a poem? How could death be useful? How was it possible for death to be a help? The subject of his poem was neither the entombment nor the resurrection but the days between. The title was Turmoil. He had always wanted to describe how for 3 days the black, raging, worm-filled earth had assailed the deathless incarnation of love, storming it with rocks and rubble as waves fly and leap at a seacoast, cover and submerge it. How for 3 days the black hurricane of earth raged, advancing and retreating. 2 lines kept coming into his head. We are glad to be near you, and time to wake up. Near him, touching him, were hell, dissolution, corruption, death, and equally near him were the spring and Mary Magdalene and life. And it was time to awake. Time to wake up and to get up. Time to arise, time for the resurrection. 16. He began to get better. At first he took everything for granted, like a half-wit. He remembered nothing. He could see no connection between one thing and another and was not surprised at anything. His wife fed him on white bread and butter and sugared tea. She gave him coffee. He had forgotten that such things did not exist, and he enjoyed their taste like poetry or like fairy tales, as something right and proper for a convalescent. Soon, however, he began to think and wonder. "How did you get all this?" he asked his wife. "Your grania got it for us." "What grania?" "Grania Zhivago." "Grania Zhivago." "Well, yes, your brother Evgraf, from Omsk. Your half-brother. He came every day while you were ill." "Does he wear a reindeer coat?" "That's right. So you did see him. You were unconscious nearly all the time. He said he had run into you on the stairs in some house or other. He knew you, he meant to speak to you, but apparently you frightened him to death. He worships you. He reads every word you write. The things he got for us. Rice, raisins, sugar. He's gone back now. He wants us to go there too. He's a strange boy, a bit mysterious. I think he must have some sort of connection with the government out there. He says, we ought to get away for a year or two. Get away from the big towns, go back to the landvar a bit, he says. I thought of the Kruger place and he said it was a very good idea. We could grow vegetables and there's the forest all around. There isn't any point in dying without a struggle, like sheep. In April that year, Zhivago set out with his whole family for the former Verikino estate, near the town of Yurii, far away in the Urals.